This is a 2-row repeat that's worked on a multiple of 4 stitches. I have 16 stitches for this sample. For row 1, you're going to be crossing 2 back and then crossing 2 front for the pattern repeat. To cross 2 back, you'll be knitting into the back loop of the second stitch on your left needle and then knitting into the back loop of the first stitch on your left needle and then dropping them from the left needle at the same time. To cross 2 front, you'll be knitting into the front loop of the second stitch on your left needle and then knitting into the front loop of the first stitch on your left needle and then dropping them at the same time. So to start row 1, we'll be crossing 2 back. You knit into the back loop of your second stitch, and then you knit into the back loop of the first stitch. And that can be a little tricky to get into. There we go. And just drop them from the left needle at the same time. Cross 2 front, knit into the front loop of the second stitch, knit into the front loop of the first stitch. Drop them from the left needle at the same time. Cross 2 back, go into the back loop of the second stitch and knit. Then you're going to go into the back loop of the first stitch and knit. Cross 2 front into the front loop of that second stitch and knit. Front loop of the first stitch and knit. Drop them both from the left needle at the same time. Cross 2 back, cross 2 front, cross 2 back, and then cross 2 front. The edges are a little tricky. You might want to add 1 or 2 stitches that you just knit plain on the ends. It might make it a little easier to work the last 2 of your repeat than the first 2. So that's row 1. Row 2 is just a purl row. Purl all stitches. Best way that you can learn this stitch is is to just pick up your yarn and needles and try. Can be a little tricky working into that second stitch first, especially when you're working through the back loops. But you can get it with practice. Let me just show you those first row stitches again. Cross 2 back, work into the back loop of the second stitch, and then the back loop of the first stitch, and drop them from the left needle at the same time. So here I go into the back loop of my second stitch, knit, and then my first stitch, get into the back loop there. Might also help you with that if you have pointy tipped needles. Okay, and then once you're in the back loop of that first stitch, you knit, and then drop both of those stitches from your left needle at the same time. Cross 2 front. Going to go into the front loop of your second stitch here and knit. Now we're going to get into that front loop of the first stitch and knit. And drop those off at the same time. Cross 2 back. Get your needle into the back loop of that second stitch and knit. And I don't want to confuse anybody, but if I have to get into the back loop of a stitch and I'm having trouble, what I sometimes do is I'll just stick my needle in the front and then push it right over the top of my needle. And then I'm in the back loop position. And that makes it a little easier, for me anyway. Cross 2 front. Cross 2 back. Let me show you that little trick again. Go into the front and swing your right needle over top of the left needle. And there you're in the back loop of that stitch. You don't have to do that. I just find that that's a little trick to help me get into that back loop sometimes. You should just do whatever's comfortable for you. Okay, cross 2 front. Cross 2 back. Oops. There we go. Okay, and finally cross 2 front to finish out your row. And of course you would purl your second row. And repeat those 2 rows for the pattern.